I returned to my childhood home and found recordings in the basement of conversations that never happened. My parents died 6 months apart. My father went first. A quiet heart attack after mowing the back lawn, a beer sweating on the railing and the game still playing inside. Mom made it through spring and most of the summer before cancer took what was left. If you've had a parent go that way, you know the long haul, pill bottles like a skyline on the counter, calls from nurses that always start with the phrase, "Are you available to talk now?" and end with, "We'll try to keep her comfortable." That phrase is a treasure. It doesn't warn you about the sleeping in chairs, the sour chemical smell that clings to your clothes, the way you start addressing the day like a problem to solve, manage this symptom, file that paperwork, smile at the neighbor who brings a casserole and stays too long. I'm 34. I left when I was 18 and swore I wouldn't come back except for Christmas and the odd wedding. The last real argument I had with my dad was in a Waffle House parking lot about whether I was wasting my potential. He was sweating, red in the face, stabbing at the air with the key fob like it could unlock my skull. I don't remember what I said back, only the feeling that the words I wanted had packed their bags and left without me. It's funny what sticks, what slides off. After he died, I tried to remember any time he put a hand on my shoulder or told me he was proud. I could come up with 3 separate instances. On the other side of the ledger, I could fill a legal pad with lectures, corrections, requests to try again and this time do it right. Anyway. The house. It's a 1970s ranch with fake shutters that never shut on anything. Brown vinyl siding and a covered porch that in winter looks like a busted jaw. They bought it after I was born. My earliest memory of it is the way the hallways smelled like Murphy oil soap and a faint lemon from some cleaner Mom swore by. The smell is mostly gone now, replaced by that empty house smell, dust, dry wood, trapped air, that makes you feel like you're inhaling old secrets. I stayed at a motel the first 2 nights, telling myself the house was unheated and that I'd get more done if I wasn't sleeping with the drafts. Third morning, I made coffee on the old drip machine, opened all the blinds, and started inventory with legal pads and post-its like a cop on a TV show. Keep, donate, trash, and the 4th pile, ask someone, which quickly turned into a catch-all for guilt. Ask who? The people who would know are dead or not taking my calls. The upstairs is simple. Kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. My room still had a faded poster above the desk, some baseball player I liked for 3 months when I was 10, and a desk drawer full of pencils I'd chewed like a beaver. My mother kept the habit of folding towels in thirds and lining them in the bathroom cabinet like books. There were 2 roast pans I've never seen used and a bundt pan I distinctly remember pulling down as a kid and wearing as a crown. I put that in keep, and I'm not sure why. Maybe to feel like some part of the kid version of me is still in there, instead of just this guy who buys bulk paper towels because they're a good deal and avoids mirrors when he's tired. The basement is where things get strange. This house has the kind of basement that's more like a long wound under the living space, concrete floor, low ceiling, a strip of bulbs that buzz and sigh when you hit the chain. The stairs creak in a slow, deliberate Morse code. Down there is where Dad kept tools he never let me touch until I could demonstrate respect, and where Mom kept the holiday boxes, labeled Christmas, front room and Christmas, outside and Christmas, kitchen, as if Santa ran separate branches of government. I let the bulbs warm up while I stood on the half landing and looked around. The laundry machines, the deep sink with the chipped enamel, the cardboard city of our past. There's a smell you only get in basements with history. Damp cardboard, old glue, faint mildew, metal dust from a belt sander that hasn't run since Clinton. I took a breath like a diver. I started with the box right by the stairs, kitchen, linens. It was exactly what it said, napkins and table runners and a set of cloth placemats with roosters on them that I remember hating as a teenager because they made the table feel like a joke. Underneath that box was one marked, Old Files. Now, old files is either taxes or trouble. This was both. Medical bills, receipts for things nobody should keep receipts for, one for a VCR repair in 1998, a cluster of letters from my aunt in Toledo who writes like a person narrating a soap opera. I skimmed until my eyes crossed. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. Against the far wall, under the pegboard where Dad hung the tools in outlines like a crime scene, there was a low plastic tote I don't remember. It was clouded from age, the kind that used to be clear but got scuffed to fog. Someone had written on the lid in Sharpie, AV, backup. The handwriting looked like my dad's when he was trying to be neat. AV, in our house, was one thing, his obsession with recording. He filmed everything. School plays, Christmas mornings. That year the dog wouldn't stop barking at the vacuum cleaner and we thought it was so funny we rewound it 3 times right then. He had a camcorder the size of a bread loaf and then later moved to smaller ones, but he never trusted anything unless it had a backup. There are boxes upstairs labeled tapes, copies, and transfers to DVD. That tote felt like more of the same. I dragged it into the light and popped the lid. Inside, not the tapes I expected. No VHS bricks. Instead, 2 neat rows of cassettes in their plastic cases, and beneath those a few flat USB flash drives tucked into little envelopes. The cassettes were labeled in Sharpie with dates and short notes: April 4th, dinner, June, garage, Halloween, late. And then, one that made me pause, July 17th, night. The M could have been mom, or morning, or me. Dad didn't leave keys to his abbreviations. We were not a cassette family, is the thing. We had a tape deck when I was little, sure, and my mother kept a box of those cheap pastel-colored blanks for dictation, but I don't remember anyone recording conversations. This wasn't AV in the family sense. This was something else. I sat on the bottom stair and let the cassette cases warm in my hands. The plastic feels different when it's been sitting in cold air, it gives a little under your fingers. I turned them over, checking dates. Most were from the early to mid-90s, which tracks with my childhood. Some had exactly the dates I'd expect: Halloween 94, Christmas 95. Fine. But others were odd. May 22nd, school talk. August 3rd, prep. January, storm. None of that triggered anything specific. Up on the laundry shelf we still had a battered Sony tape player, the kind with the little door you press and it smacks open. I had half a mind to take the whole tote upstairs, but I didn't want to look at them in the light. I put the player on the washing machine, plugged it into an outlet that cried for retirement, and popped in April 4th, dinner. It clicked in and whirred. For a second I heard nothing but hiss and the faint, mechanical heartbeat of the device. Then, forks, a glass set down too hard, my mother's voice saying, "Not now, please, let's just eat." My father, "I'm not doing anything." His tone, that performative innocence he did when he thought he was funny. Then a small voice, mine, saying, "Can we have milk?" I froze. That's not remarkable, a kid asking for milk at dinner. But I knew the cadence. The little rise at the end, that softening I used to do. I know what I sounded like as a kid because Dad's camcorder taught me the sound of my own head too early. But I didn't remember this dinner. I tried to call up the kitchen, who sat where, what we ate. The audio helped, the scrape of a chair, the clink of the salt shaker we had that rattled like a maraca when it was almost empty. It was definitely our kitchen. "We're not doing this right now," Mom said again, firmer. We said after. After what? I heard myself say, and I didn't like it. There was a suspiciousness in it I don't remember. A little sharpness. I was sassy as a kid sometimes, sure, but this sounded like I was auditioning for the role of myself. I know that makes no sense. Hang with me. My father coughed and then, in the voice he used for serious talks, the one where he slowed down each word like it was stepping stones across a stream, said, "We have to discuss preparation, that's all. It's not a big deal." "Not at the table," Mom said, a knife clink. "Please." "Preparation for what?" the small voice asked. "For the experiment?" I hit stop without meaning to. The room did that trick where the silence gets loud and you hear the blood in your ears. I started the tape again and played the line twice more, because somehow repetition might make it turn into something else. But it sat there, cool as a knife on the table, the child's voice, my voice, saying a word nobody in our house should have said at dinner. Experiment. In our actual life, the one in my head, we didn't talk like that. My parents were ordinary. Dad worked at the plant until the plant didn't need him, then he ran maintenance at the county complex. Mom worked part-time at a dentist's office. We didn't discuss preparation. Experiment belonged to science class and the vinegar and baking soda volcano we built that one year and decided was hilarious until the cat got into it. I let the tape run. There was a chair scraping back, my mother's sigh, and then dishes moving like she was clearing when irritated. That was accurate, if nothing else. Dad said, in that softened voice parents use when they want you to think something is okay, we just want to make sure you're comfortable. That's all. I don't like it, small me said. It feels like being watched. We're all being watched, Dad said, and then laughed as if it was a joke. Another clink, the vault door of the old fridge closing. The tape faded to a hiss and then a muffle like someone's finger was over the mic. I pressed stop. I took the cassette out and turned it in my hand. On the label, next to April 4th, dinner, there was a tiny mark I'd missed, a dot with a tail. A comma? A smudge? The tape felt light, as if it might float if I tossed it back into the tote. I'll be honest, I told myself then that it was a game. That Dad had recorded something as a joke, that he scripted us, that he'd been messing around with audio. He did stuff like that sometimes. He'd splice in music over our home videos, cheap synth he'd loved, until the footage felt like a training video for something tragic. But my mother hated it when he played editor. She'd say, "It's our life. It doesn't need your soundtrack." And this had her voice on it too. She wasn't a liar. Not on tape. I tried another one, June, garage. The motor word. There was a buzz of a fluorescent light, the distinct garage acoustics that make everything echo like it's been made taller. My father was talking to someone low, his voice pitched down like he was trying not to be overheard. "We can do it after he's asleep," he said. "He won't know." A second voice. A woman's voice, but softer than my mother's, not her exact cadence. She had a swallowed way of ending sentences, like she didn't trust punctuation. "You said that last time," she said. "I'm saying it again," my father said, annoyed. "What, do you want to bring him here? In the garage? That's insane." The woman made a sound like a laugh underwater. "You brought them here once." A clatter, a wrench knocked against something. Then, footsteps, and a door opening, and a very small version of me saying, "Dad?" The tape clicked and went blank for a stretch. I thought the recorder had eaten it. Then breath on the mic, like it had been picked up and carried. The next voice was my mother's, whispering in the way she did when she was trying to keep the world from hearing she'd changed sides on some argument. "I told you. He's listening. You don't have to use the garage. There's the basement." I paused the tape. I stood there in the actual basement, cassette player on the metal lip of the washer, and the light over me buzzing like an insect that had learned to hum. There's a taste to fear that I think is just adrenaline, metal and sour, like sucking on a penny. I could feel that in my mouth. Let me step out of myself a second and put this straight, I am not a paranoid person. I'm the guy who leaves his keys on the kitchen counter in a clutter that could hide contraband from the CIA and then miracle finds them when he's already late. I don't check behind shower curtains. I don't do the thing where you turn off the stove and then 30 minutes later you're sure you didn't. My anxiety is garden variety. So when I tell you I started looking over my shoulder in my parents' basement like a teenager who'd seen one too many slashers, understand it wasn't because I love drama. It was because something deep in me recognized the shape of the threat before my thoughts did. I tried to be methodical. I took the cassette out, wrote, on a post-it and stuck it to the case. I pulled another at random, Halloween, late. Kids yelling in the street, the squeak of the front door, my mother saying, "1 piece each, please," in the way she had of trying to civilize chaos. Then, deeper into the night, after the quiet, I heard the TV in the background, something with a laugh track. Then my father, whispering, "Do you see him?" The voice of someone I didn't recognize answering, "Yes." And my father again, "He's smaller this time." Smaller. My skin went cold. Smaller than what? The tape wasn't consistent. There were long gaps, and then a surge of sound, as if someone had pressed record and stop and then record again, crudely. In one of those gaps, something happened with the background noise that I'd only describe as a flinch. Like the house shifted. The mic grabbed the tiniest stutter from the world. I realized then that the noise floor, the hum of appliances, the distant traffic, was different than I remembered from that year. It was like a version of our house built out of wrong memories. I started to doubt the dates. I pulled the cases out of the tote and ordered them on the washer by year, from 92 to 98. That's the window they covered. I was between 2nd and 8th grade for those years. We moved, this is important, we moved in 96. Not far, just across town, into a rental while the kitchen in this house was remodeled. It was a whole thing, 3 months of takeout and sleeping on a sofa bed while my parents argued about what kind of countertop was timeless. So when I saw a tape labeled NOV 96, basement, I put it aside with a little smile like I'd caught the universe in a small lie. Then I played it, and heard our basement. Our specific basement, echoing exactly as it did under our feet, with the old dryer vent clicking when the wind outside hit the side of the house. Someone was down there. 2 someones, low voices. One said, "He won't remember the gaps." The other said, "He does remember. He just doesn't know he does." I stopped. I rewound. I pressed play again. I listened to that exchange until the words lost meaning and started to sound like foreign words in a mouth from nowhere. That's when I decided to get out of the basement. I grabbed 3 tapes, the dinner one, the garage one, the 96 basement one, and the USB drives, because if this was what I thought it might be, I wasn't leaving it where a power surge or a leaking pipe could erase it. I went upstairs and set them on the kitchen table, a worn oak slab that had seen 1,000 breakfasts and, maybe, one conversation about experiments. I made coffee. I stared at the tapes like they were going to tell me what to do. They didn't. There's a part of me that knew the next step was to call someone. My friend Matt, who's a lawyer and also the kind of guy who once told a cop, technically, and lived to tell it. Or my aunt in Toledo, dramatic and tired and full of family gossip I never wanted until now. But I kept thinking about my mother's voice on that first tape, the way she said, "Please," not like a plea but like a command that had learned to wear polite clothes. She didn't want this talked about. She wanted it at the table, in the family. Maybe that was the point. Keep it contained. Keep it in the basement with the Christmas decorations and the mower that never started on the first try. I didn't plug in the USB drives right away. Part of me was scared they'd have nothing on them, and part of me was scared they'd have everything. Instead I went for a walk around the neighborhood, because that's what you do when you're trying not to believe a new truth. You go look at old trees. The places you scraped your knees on your bike. You go count mailboxes like they're friends you haven't called. Mrs. Jameson across the street was watering her roses with that gentle, judgy precision people reserve for things they can control. She's older now, her hair gone from iron gray to white, and the way she peered over her glasses made me feel 12 again. "You're back," she said, like I'd come home from prison. "Just for a bit," I said. "Got to get the place ready." She nodded. Hard to be the last one. I waited to see if she'd say something like, "Your father was a character," which is old lady code for, "Your father was difficult," or, "Your mother always had a smile," which means, she didn't show you tears. Instead she said, "You boys used to make such noise." Boys? I said it before I could stop myself. She squinted. "Well, not always. Sometimes just you. But there were times, She tilted her head, Waterington paused. You had a cousin visiting a lot one year, didn't you? I don't think so, I said. We didn't. My cousins lived far and came once every 2 or 3 summers, and those visits were like county fairs, long and talked about months before and after. Maybe you heard the TV. Well, she said, and pursed her lips in a way that said I was an unreliable narrator of my own life. Memory is a funny thing. The water arced onto a rose with a kind of punishing grace. You look tired, she added, with that brand of kindness that doubles as accusation. Back at the house I plugged in one of the USB drives. There were audio files sorted into folders by year. The file names were in my father's style, date stamp first, then subject, sometimes a location. I clicked 1995/05/_12/kitchen/after. It opened in the basic player. More of the same. The kitchen hum. The sound of my mother washing something, the clink of forks, Dad clearing his throat. Then my kid self again, but different. Less shy. What happens if I don't remember? The small voice asked. My father, then we will tell you to remember. My mother, don't say it like that. Like what? Dad, apologetic now. It's not a threat. It's instruction. Instruction, my mother said, as if testing the weight of the word. Then, lower, barely above the sink noise, he's going to ask about before. Before what? Dad said, careful. Before him. I scrubbed back and forth on the audio like I was going to find loopholes. The words didn't budge. They sat there, weird and heavy, eyes down, waiting for me to understand. By mid-afternoon I'd drawn a map of the house on a piece of paper and circled the places I knew we had phones back then, the places a tape recorder could sit and pick up conversation without being obvious. Kitchen counter by the bread box. Living room end table by the lamp. The stair landing. Maybe the hallway by the bedrooms. Then I told myself to get a grip, because who was I, some conspiracy theorist drawing red yarn connections between a spice rack and the dog bed? Still, I checked the underside of the kitchen table with my phone's flashlight. Dust bunnies the size of small pets stared back. Nothing taped there. I found myself relieved, then ashamed. Dinner that night was take-out Chinese at the kitchen table, like a bad impression of family. I ate too fast, realized I was doing it, and put the fork down. The house creaked in the way empty houses do when they're adjusting to your footsteps again. I told myself I'd play one more tape before bed. Just one. A rule. Then rules don't always protect you. August 3rd, prep, I picked. The audio started with long, empty room noise. The tape hissed, and then, barely there, the sound of someone moving in the chair across from the tape recorder. Fabric against fabric. A sigh. My mother's voice, are you ready? I didn't hear my father on this one. There was only my mother, and a second voice that was mine but not. Same grain. Same little breathy pause before taking a risk. But the content, God. He, the child me, said, will I be the same? My mother took too long to answer. You'll be you, she said finally. That's what matters. What about the other me, the boy asked. What if he comes back? You'll be you, she said again, and the tape clicked as if someone had moved it closer to them. That's what matters. Then, after a swallow, he's gone. Where? It was so small, that word. Like a penny in a bowl, the sound of it. Silence. Then, the sound of someone standing. The chair skid. I love you, my mother said. I love you so much. You're ours. The tape stopped like a guillotine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the old sofa with a blanket that, up close, smelled faintly of old perfume and dryer sheets and my own bad decisions. Every sound in the house became a voice. The refrigerator cycling on was my father muttering. A tree branch hit the siding and I nearly sat up to say, "Speak up." I kept thinking of Mrs. Jameson's, "You boys." I kept thinking of the words, "gone," and "ours," like two rocks in a stream I had to jump between but couldn't. In the morning I made eggs and poured coffee and tried to act like a person who had normal plans for a normal day. I decided I needed to verify something small, something that could be wrong in a less painful way. The move in '96. The remodeling. That was a marker in time, a thing other people would remember. I called the contractor my parents used, or the one whose magnet was still on the side of the fridge. The number was disconnected. I looked up the guy's name online. He died in 2011. Okay. I called the neighbor on the other side, Mr. Klein, the one who used to come over with a ladder because my father's was on loan, by which he meant under a pile of future projects. "We moved out for the kitchen one summer," I said, and felt like I was planting a flag. 3 months. Remember? He hesitated. "You were gone for a while," he said, slow. "But it wasn't summer." "It was," I said. "We had to keep the air conditioner on low in the rental because it leaked." "No," he said, gentle but firm, like he was prying a pebble out of my palm. "It was October to December. I remember because your dad didn't put up lights that year and your mother said she was relieved." I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I wanted the argument to be about air conditioning, not my life. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I'm old," he said, which is the opposite of reassuring. "I'm sure of weird things." I called my aunt again, and this time she picked up. I got the cross-current of her TV and her breath and the click of her turning down the volume. "You're at the house," she said, and it wasn't a question. "Yeah. I can't do stairs anymore," she said, as if I'd asked. "Otherwise I'd come help." "It's okay," I said. "I'm mostly organizing." "Hey, do you remember when we moved out for the kitchen?" She hummed, a thinking sound. "Sure. You stayed at that little bungalow near the river." "For 3 months." I said. "Oh no," she said. "For a few weeks. Maybe 6. They rushed it. Your mother wanted it done before Thanksgiving. She said, we can't eat turkey off paper plates. And then we microwaved the gravy anyway and it split and we pretended it was fine." "Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just trying to put the timeline together." "You always were a list maker," she said. "Like your brother." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" I said, too quick. "Your cousin," she corrected herself so fast it clicked. "Your cousin. I didn't sleep last night. My brain's porridge." "Right," I said, and we did that thing where both parties pretend the sentence before didn't happen. After we hung up I stood in the kitchen with the phone against my thigh, the glass of the screen cold on my skin, and tried not to think about the way she'd hesitated. That afternoon I pulled out the old photo albums. There's a type of time travel the internet can't compete with, the plastic-sheeted pages of a family's past. I flipped through birthdays with cakes leaning at brave angles, Halloweens where I was a pirate or a ghost or once, for reasons I can't fathom, a traffic cone. Then I found something I didn't know to look for. In the background of a 4th of July picnic photo, me in a red striped shirt, my mother shielding her eyes with one hand, there was a figure near the edge of the yard. A man, turned away, talking to my father. From the hairline and the shape of the shoulders and a pair of jeans that hang the way mine do because I buy the wrong cut every time, he looked like me. Not as I was then. As I am now. I told myself it was a cousin. We have 100 cousins. A trick of the angle. A passerby. I told myself everything except the thing the photo suggested. Then I looked again, and saw it, the wristwatch. I have a scar next to my wrist bone from when I broke a glass in college. In the photo, the man's watch sat over a faint pale line in exactly the right place. The blood left my hand so fast my fingers felt like dry sticks. I closed the album. I opened it again. The photo didn't change. Okay, I thought. Okay. This is still a prank the past is playing. It's a trick. It's bad ink and light. My father liked his camera. Maybe he got cute with exposures. That thought broke apart as soon as I held it. He did video edits. He didn't Photoshop. He didn't have Photoshop. He had a workbench and labels and a way of looking at problems that made them either fixable or someone else's business. He didn't fabricate people at family picnics. I went back to the basement because I'm an idiot or because I'm honest. The tote sat where I'd left it, lid off like a mouth. The air was colder. I chose the tape I'd been putting off, Jan, Storm. That one date straddled the moving period and the not moving period depending on whose mind you borrowed. I put it in the player and hit play. Wind, heavy, like a coat. The house groaning. A battery-powered radio, low. My mother, he won't sleep. My father, he doesn't have to. It's all right if he hears it. Here's what? There's my kid voice, but fatigued, edges dulled by that thin exhaustion kids get that's half boredom, half fear. Here's the wind. Here's us, my father said. Here's the plan. I paused. I listened to the house itself then, not the one in the tape. Somewhere upstairs, a something settled. I hit play again. The plan, Mom said, reluctantly. We're going to ask you questions in the morning. They'll be simple. What's your name? How old are you? The year. Your teacher's name. What for? Small me asked, and I could hear his breathing quicken. What for? Because we have to be sure, my father said, and then, softer, it'll make sense when you're older. How much older? Small me asked. He sounded like he was about to cry. Then, and I'm not proud of this, I paused the tape because my throat did that tightening thing and I knew if I heard him, me, cry I'd have to add one more notch to the list of things I didn't get over. When I finally let it play, the tape caught a new sound, a door opening, slow, the hinge complaining. Steps on the stairs to the basement. My mother whispering, careful. Then my father, now? We should do it when the house is loud, Mom said. When the wind masks. My God, my father said, not in prayer. Do you think he knows? He's 7, she said. There was a clatter, something metal set down too hard. A drawer sliding. Then, and this is the part one don't know how to write because it feels like lying even though it's the truest part. I heard my own voice, from a distance, saying calmly, he won't remember this part. Not the small voice. My voice. The age I am now. The tone I use when I'm trying to get someone to understand a complicated idea gently. He won't remember this part, I said, and then the tape jumped as if someone had gotten too near the microphone, and all that came through was breath, and the low murmur of my parents' voices talking to someone in the basement who, based on every other fact in my life, couldn't have been me. That night I slept upstairs in my old room, if you can call what I did sleeping. I lay on my back and watched car headlights skim the ceiling like ghosts with somewhere to be. The tapes were in a neat row on the desk, looking like little black teeth. I put a chair under the doorknob. It's funny, what does that even protect you from? The past? Yourself? In the morning I brewed coffee so strong it tasted like burnt toast and bad news. I took one of the USB drives to the public library and printed the file list, because I wanted something I could hold in my hand that said timestamps and names. The librarian glanced at the list and asked, kindly, if I wanted to print the files. I told her no. She looked at me the way you look at a person who has just said, no, I'll walk, it's only 4 hours. I smiled anyway. My face felt like porcelain. On the way out, I saw a bulletin board with old flyers, piano lessons, a lost cat with bright green eyes, a notice for a talk at the Historical Society about the town's founding families. I had an impulse to walk in there and ask them if they had any records about us, which is insane because we are not a founding family. We are the opposite of that. We are people who bought a ranch and made it a home and, apparently, recorded that home in a way that made the walls breathe. Back at the house, I decided to do one normal thing. I took the trash out. I rolled the bin to the curb. The wind was up and had that pre-storm taste, electric and humid. A boy on a skateboard shot past, one foot dangling like a rudder. He looked back, because people my age don't belong on porches during work hours unless we're fixing something. He waved and I waved back and felt, for 1 second, like a man who had not pressed play on his past. I lasted an hour before I was back at the basement stairs, tape in my hand. July 17th, night. I saved it because I thought the M might stand for Mom. It did. The recording started with a scrape, chair legs on concrete. Then my mother, "This one isn't the first," she said, voice steady in a way that told me she'd practiced the sentence. "But we will make it the last." I stood there with my hand on the railing so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't breathe. I let the tape keep going like a man who doesn't stop when he sees the cliff. I told myself I'd write this down as soon as I could, get it out of my head and into yours where, maybe, it can be just a story. Maybe you can tell me it reads like fiction. Maybe you can tell me I'm dramatizing. Maybe I am. I hope I am. But I know the smell of Murphy oil soap and lemon. I know the shape of my father's footsteps when he was trying not to wake anyone. I know my mother's sigh that meant the day had started without her consent. And I know my own voice, even when I hear it saying, clear as a bell, a thing I never said.